Ventus Chevrolet. In sport class, we have Rock Solid and Fever, Shockwave, Aquatread, Toucan Racing, Parts Plus, a lot of competitors in B class. In production, Runaway, Texas Gold, Crazy Rhythm, RC Marine, Dirty Dancer, Fountain, and many more. In factory class, Gone Bananas, WNP Associates, and Ocean Outboard. We'll also have some specially mounted The Kilo Run is held, of course, in the Bay to determine the top racing speeds of boats in each individual class. Now, this is a timed, measured distance event, and the winners in each category will hold the record for U.S. offshore. Some of the race boats competing for this Kilo Run include Gifford Racing in open class, also Team Jaguar, also in open. In offshore D, we have Sassy Cat. In modified, How Sweet It Is Too. In pro stock, Patriot and Tough Enough. In super stock, How Sweet It Is. In sport, Fever will be competing as well in the Kilo Run, as well as Pennzoil and Shockwave. There is Skip, the medical and safety director, giving final instructions to the drivers during the Kilo Run meeting. In production class, Great Adventure also will be trying to set a record, as will RC Marine and Fountain. In factory class, Gone Bananas and Ocean Outboard. Now, the drivers, of course, will be making two legs, going back and forth in Presque Isle Bay to set a record, and the average time of those two legs will be their final time. The drivers will be picking from a hat to determine when they will race, in what order. Of course, if they choose to race again a second time to get a better time, they can do that as well. As we look at Team Jaguar, we're going to wander around the dry and wet pit areas, and in a little while we'll be going airborne, overlooking the marina and the parade lap of this 1993 Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run, and the second national race for U.S. offshore for this season. Now, there will be two races that we'll be covering today because racing officials thought it best to separate the boats because of the narrow cut between Presque Isle Bay and Lake Erie. The first race will include classes A, B, and F. Over 25 boats in that race. In the second race, there will be the Open, the Modified, the Pro Stock, and the Super Stock. Water conditions. There's Wave Hippie. Once again, there are over 25 boats in this first race, which includes the A, B, and F class. And, of course, the second race will include the Open, the Modified, the Pro Stock, and the Super Stock. And there we look at the milling area. And there's the orange smoke, which signals the fact that the race is just a short while away. Once again, we see the orange smoke. Boats in the background, waiting for the beginning of this first race. Boats are now lining up. Once again, the water conditions in the bay are rather calm, so it should be a pretty fast start at least. And as we see the boats picking up some speed, we see Fever, we see Aquatred, we see Great Adventure. And the race is just a few moments away. Boats lining up. On the inside, there's Fever and Toucan Racing. As we pan over to the middle, we see Rock Solid, Fountain, and Ken's Oil in the middle of the pack. Once again, Fever on the inside, Toucan Racing, Rock Solid, and Fountain. We've got the green flag, and the race has begun, and it looks like Shockwave has gone to the immediate lead, followed by Rock Solid, Ken's Oil, and Fever. This is the 1993 Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run. As the pace boat peels away, we see that Shockwave is in the lead, followed by Rock Solid, Ken's Oil, and Fever on the inside. There's Fever on the inside in B class. Fever is a 28-foot Manta, powered by two 550 horsepower Zool racing engines and Merc Cruiser drives. Aboard Fever, driver Joseph Sgro from Belmore, New York. There you see Ken's Oil and Rock Solid, and of course Shockwave in the lead. There's Fever on the inside. Aboard Fever, we have Joseph Sgro as the driver. On the throttle, Joe Lantona from Merrick, New York. Navigating, Jeff Cropper from Dix Hills, New York. There's Ken's Oil. And we have Rock Solid on the outside. Now you're looking at the crew there of Fever and their racing bolsters. Fever, B6, also won first place at the Montauk Grand Prix. There's Ken's Oil and Rock Solid and Fever on the inside, and Shockwave. A lot of competition, all very, very close to each other there. Some heavy-duty racing going on right now. And there, of course, the spectators are watching all of this as they go through the cut. There's Rock Solid on the outside, Shockwave there in the middle, and on the inside, Fever. This is the hotly contested battle we were looking for in B class, and we've got it. There's Shockwave and Fever fighting it out with Rock Solid on the outside. Now we're on board Fever. There's the Fever racing team, and there on the right side, of our picture is Shockwave. And there you see Shockwave just a little bit ahead of Fever, both battling it out here in B class. They're going through the cut. There's the crew of Fever. On board, we have driver Joe Sgro from Belmore, New York. At the throttle on the right side of our picture, Joe Latona from Merrick, New York. And navigating is Jeff Cropper from Dix Hills, New York. You're looking at the Fever racing team. Good view of what they see in this 1993 Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run. Those Zool racing engines sound excellent. By the way, the Fever racing team would like to thank S&S Propeller, Rick Zool, of course, for his motors, and Al Grover's Marine in Freeport. B6 Fever, by the way, took first place at the Montauk Grand Prix earlier this year with an average speed of 81.01 miles per hour. Once again, there's Fever on the inside, Shockwave on the outside, and Rock Solid on the far outside. Heavy competition here in B class. We thought the bumpy waters perhaps in Lake Erie would slow the boats down somewhat, but not at all. They're doing very, very fine, and the speeds are very quick. And there's a lot of competition going on here in B class between Shockwave and Fever. Two boats that are evenly matched, who have been competing all year. Matter of fact, Shockwave came in second place at the Montauk Grand Prix, and Fever in first place in that same race earlier this year. There's Shockwave on the outside. Shockwave has two 550 horsepower Bandit inboards. Fever has 550 horsepower Zool racing engines. So there's some competition going on there engine-wise. There's a 28-foot Manta Fever. On board, driver Joseph Scrow from Belmore, New York. At the throttle, Joe Latona from Merrick and Jeff Cropper navigating. Jeff's from Dix Hills, New York. And, of course, there's Shockwave, a little glimpse there on the outside, trying to make up a little ground. Good competition. Good racing going on here between two great crews and two terrific boats. Just listen to those engines. Joe Latona doing an excellent job at the throttle. We wish the Fever Racing team the very best during this race. You're looking at the Fever Racing team. This is the 1993 Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run. If you look closely, you'll see our onboard camera on the engine scoop of the Fever Racing team right there on the outside. Once again, Fever is currently in first place in B class. You're looking at the Fever Racing team. There's Rock Solid on the outside. And Shockwave B71. You're looking at the Shockwave Racing team. Shockwave is powered by two 550 horsepower Bandit inboards and Mercruiser outdrives. Aboard Shockwave, driver Kurt Berger from Brick, New Jersey. At the throttle, Mike Fiore from Hampton, New York. Navigating, Rich Tropoli from Toms River, New Jersey. You're looking at the Shockwave Racing team. Shockwave B71 took second place at the Montauk Grand Prix earlier this year with an average speed of 78.79 miles per hour. Fine jump there, Shockwave. Those Hustler Powerboats doing a fine job handling the water conditions. On the outside, there's Ken's Oil, and on the far outside, Rock Solid. Navigator Rich Tropoli from Toms River, New Jersey would like to thank Paul Fiore from Hustler Powerboats and also Kurt Berger for building these fine engines. He's doing a fine job. Just listen to those Bandit inboards. B71 Shockwave. Some of the other competition in B class include Rock Solid, Fever, Ken's Oil, Toucan Racing, and Aquatread. We think that Shockwave is really a fine-looking boat, good sounding boat, and is going to offer the rest of the field some fine competition for the rest of the 1993 season. Shockwave B71. Currently in third place in B class is V8, Ken's Oil. Ken's Oil is a 32-foot Tiger Viper, powered by two 300 horsepower shipwreck engines and Mercury drives. Aboard Ken's Oil, driver Doug Popma from Grand Rapids, Michigan. At the throttle, Ken McMartin. He's also the owner, and he's also from Grand Rapids. You're looking at Ken's Oil V8, currently third in B class. Ken McMartin from Grand Rapids doing a fine job at the throttle. Look at that jump there. Those boats are handling real well in these choppy waters here in Lake Erie. Ken's Oil took third place in the Kilo Run. He came in with an average speed of 91.6 miles per hour. In second was Shockwave with 91.8. And in first place in the kilo run in B class was Fever with 91.9. As you can see, the B class is very competitive, all within perhaps a tenth of a mile per hour. Now we're on another B boat, B96 Parts Plus. Parts Plus is a 33-foot fountain powered by two 500-horsepower Mercury inboards and Mercruiser outdrives. Aboard Parts Plus, driver Jeff Haley from Coldwater, Michigan. At the throttle, Brad Myers, also from Coldwater. Parts Plus took second place earlier this year in Lake Peoria with an average speed of 87.36 miles per hour. You're looking at B96 Parts Plus. The Parts Plus sponsors include Parts Plus, Myers Super Value, and Haylett Signs. You're looking at the Parts Plus Rush Racing Team. The Freeze Frame Video crew would like to thank Jeff Halett for making the Freeze Frame Video stickers for the 1993 season. Parts Plus Rush Racing Team, B96. There's Jeff Halett of Coldwater, Michigan, driving, and Brad Myers at the throttle. Both doing a fine job during this race, this second national race of the U.S. offshore for this year. There you see some of the spectator boats in the background. And of course the shores of Lake Erie also. Great place to watch a race. And of course there are the spectators as we go through the cut. We understand that perhaps 25,000 spectators were expected today to watch this race. The weather certainly has cooperated. A fine day to watch the race. We wish the Parts Plus Rush Racing Team the very best of luck during the rest of the 1993 racing season. In A class, A12 RC Marine, a 30-foot superboat with a yellow hull and deck, powered by two 385-horsepower Zool inboards and Mercruiser outdrives. Driving RC Marine, Steve Abbott from Laurel Hollow, New York. At the throttle, RC, he's from West Islip, New York. Navigating, Steve Sokolich, he's from Astoria, New York. RC Marine took first place in Montauk earlier this year with an average speed of 74.43 miles per hour, and also third place at Newburyport. The RC Marine Racing Team would like to give special thanks to Rick Silvestri, he's the chief mechanic, for his hard work and dedication. Also MRD for all their help and support, and Richie Zool for his contributions to the team, as well as Matt Koenig from Amsoil for always being there when needed. RC says that he also has special thanks to his daughter Melissa. You're looking at the RC Marine Racing Team. That's a 30-foot superboat manufactured right in Lindenhurst, Long Island. Of course, there are the many spectators, the thousands of spectators that turned out for this race. Second national race for the U.S. offshore for 1993. You're looking at the RC Marine Racing Team. Who looks fairly comfortable there in their racing bolsters. Now there we go. We have an onboard camera aboard RC Marine, and this is what the race looked like at the very beginning as we are making some headway here through Presque Isle Bay as we're heading through the cut there you can see ahead of us. And as you can see, the waters are fairly calm, so RC Marine is making very good time there in the beginning of the race. Some of the other competition in A class and along with RC Marine include Great Adventure, Texas Gold, Runaway, Crazy Rhythm, Wave Hippie, and Fountain. We're looking at RC Marine at the beginning of the race as we're heading through the cut, heading towards Lake Erie. Once again, you can see the water is almost flat, not quite, but very, very calm. Very good way to start a race. You're looking from our onboard camera. A little back and forth there a little bit, but in control. Now, if you look on the left side, you're going to see Great Adventure alongside RC Marine here, a little bit ahead of RC Marine. They're battling it out here in A-Class as they're heading towards the cut. We're just about in the cut now, and there you see Great Adventure on the left side making some headway, and we get splashed. At that point, we don't see too much. But nonetheless, a nice shot here, a vantage point from what the driver and the rest of the crew members see here during the beginning of this race. RC Marine averaged 78 miles per hour during the kilo run before this race. You're looking at the RC Marine racing team. Again, there are the many spectator boats in the background on the shores of Lake Erie. Just listen to those Zool racing engines. We'd just like to say that Steve Sokolich is doing a fine job navigating as his RC from Islip, New York at the throttle, and driving as Steve Abbott from Laurel Hollow, New York. You're looking at the RC Marine racing team. Once again, the bumpy waters do not seem to be slowing down the boats. They're all making pretty good time there. Good speeds. There's Toucan Racing in B-Class, B20 on the inside, and Aquatred on the outside, B34. Toucan Racing is a 33-foot power play. Aquatred is a 33-foot fountain. So we got a battle going on there between a fountain and a power play in B-Class. Some good competition. Once again, there's Toucan Racing on the inside, a 33-foot power play, powered by two 525 horsepowered Mercury engines and Mercruiser drives. Aboard Toucan Racing, driver Paul Staniak from Pompano Beach, Florida. At the throttle, David Gerzak from Sterling Heights, Michigan. By the way, Toucan Racing came in third place at Lake Peoria early this year with an average speed of 80.01 miles per hour. There you see Aquatred on the outside. They're neck and neck, maneuvering to get ahead. Real good battle going on there in B-Class between Aquatred and Toucan Racing. As we were saying, Toucan Racing came in third place with an average speed of 80.01 at Lake Peoria earlier this year. Also in fifth place in Texas at the East-West Powerboat Shootout with an average speed of 70 miles per hour. There's Aquatred on the outside making its move, coming from behind and passing Toucan Racing. As we look back, we saw Tahoe also in B-Class. Now as we approach Aquatred, Aquatred is B34. It's a 33-foot fountain powered by two 520 horsepower shipwreck engines and Mercruiser drives. Driving Aquatred, Thomas McQueen from Mount Clemens, Michigan. At the throttle, Tony Raffin from St. Clair, Michigan. Navigating is Rick Conflitti from East Point, Michigan. Rick, by the way, is a new member of the team. Also the major sponsor, Red Carpet Kime Realty. The Aquatred Racing Team would like to thank some of its other sponsors. In addition to Red Carpet Kime Realty, there's Castrol Motor Oil, Jeffrey Buick Nissan, Bill's Towing, Graphics Lettering, Shipwreck Marine, Mangles Custom Wheels, Lapidus Publicity Group, Interstate Batteries, Fram, Autolite, Welding Dynamic, and Creative Deco. You're looking at the 33-foot fountain Aquatred. By the way, Aquatred took fourth place earlier this year at Lake Peoria with an average speed of 74.63 miles per hour. The Aquatred Racing Team is going to donate all its winnings for this year to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. A very nice gesture on the part of the Aquatred Racing Team. Tony Retread Raffin is doing a fine job at the throttle. You're looking at the Aquatred Racing Team. Uh-oh, B-34 is having a problem. It looks like the boat is slowing down. Some technical problems possibly with B-34. Too bad. There's A-176, the Fountain. The Fountain is a 29-foot fountain powered by one 650-horsepower Troy Dennis with Mercruiser #5 drives. Uh-oh, the Fountain just hooked and almost spun out, but is back in control there. A close call for the Fountain Racing Team, but seems to be back in control now. Aboard the Fountain, driver Doug Lewis from Brick, New Jersey. At the throttle, Pat Patel, also from Brick. The A-176 Fountain took 4th place earlier this year at the Florida Boat State Championships, the APBA, with an average speed of 65.20 miles per hour. Also 2nd place at the East-West Powerboat Shootout, average speed of 61.30 miles per hour. And in 3rd place in Atlantic City earlier this year. You're looking at A-176, the Fountain Racing Team. Both driver and throttle man doing a fine job. Driver once again is Pat, or rather Doug Lewis. He's from Brick, New Jersey. Pat, as I was going to say, Pat Patel, he is at the throttle. As you saw a little bit earlier, just got out of a close call, but doing a fine job. Some of the other competition in the A class include Runaway, Texas Gold, Great Adventure, Wide Open, Dirty Dancer, and RC Marine. You're looking at the Fountain Racing Team. And once again, this is the 1993 Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run on Lake Erie. The Fountain Racing Team. There's B-12, Rip and Tear. Rip and Tear is a 31-foot profile. That's Rip and Tear in B class. Rip and Tear is powered by two 525 horsepower Mercury inboards with Speedmaster drives. Aboard Rip and Tear is driver Dick Castellini from Vineland, New Jersey. As we look at Rip and Tear, we see Dirty Dancing in A class on the outside. At the throttle of Rip and Tear is Ed DePalma from Millville, New Jersey. Rip and Tear took 3rd place earlier this year in Montauk with an average speed of 70.15 miles per hour. You're looking at the Rip and Tear Racing Team. Doing a fine job. Some of the other competition in B class along with Rip and Tear include Aquatred, Parts Plus, Ken's Oil, Shockwave, Rock Solid, and Fever. And of course, there are the spectators lined up along that cut that separates Presque Isle Bay from Lake Erie. That's a great vantage point to watch this race. As we see B-12 Rip and Tear make its way through the cut. This is the 2nd national race for U.S. Offshore for this year, and U.S. Offshore's 5th race of the season so far. There's Rip and Tear. Dick Castellini at the driving and Ed DePalma at the throttle, both doing a fine job. Both seems to have a good attitude, and those engines sound excellent. There's Crazy Rhythm currently in the lead pack in A class. A10 Crazy Rhythm is a 28-foot Magnum powered by two 425 horsepower Chevy engines and Mercruiser drives. Joey Turek from St. Charles, Illinois is driving Crazy Rhythm. At the throttle, Dave Bellickson. And navigating is Mike Hendrickson. Dave is from Mount Clemens, Michigan, and Mike Hendrickson is from St. Charles, Illinois also. Some of the sponsors of Crazy Rhythm include Tanglewood Performance Marine, Sterling Homes, Tanglewood Kennels, Charlemagne Detailing, and Crazy Rhythm won the 1992 USORA Central Division Production Championship. You're looking at 810 Crazy Rhythm. Some of the other crew members on Crazy Rhythm include Wynda Hendrickson, Lori and Joe Turek. We just like to say that we think that Lori and Joe bring their very special qualities to making the Crazy Rhythm racing team as competitive as it can be. You're looking at the Crazy Rhythm racing team, 810. Some of the other competitors in the A class include Texas Gold, Runaway, Great Adventure, Wide Open, RC Marine, and Wave Hippie. There's the Lake Erie shoreline in the background. This is the 1993 Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run. Great day for racing and a great race. You're looking at Crazy Rhythm. The throttle man doing an excellent job there aboard Crazy Rhythm, and the navigator and driver, they're right on course. You're looking at the Crazy Rhythm racing team. And there's Rip and Tear on the outside. Of course, Rip and Tear is in B class. There's Crazy Rhythm on the inside in A class. There's Rip and Tear passing Crazy Rhythm. As we look at Rip and Tear and Crazy Rhythm now, they're heading towards that cut, going towards Presque Isle Bay. There's Dirty Dancer A54. Dirty Dancer is a 25-foot checkmate powered by one 600-horsepower Chevy inboard with a Merc Cruiser outdrive. The driver of Dirty Dancer, Bob Nothnagel from Rochester, New York. At the throttle, Tom Judd, also of Rochester. You're looking at Dirty Dancer A54. In 1992, Dirty Dancer took first place at the Kent Narrows, third place at Barnegat Bay, and also third place at Ocean City, and fifth place at the Northeast Points. This year, 1993, Dirty Dancer took fourth place at Montauk, New York, and first place at the Newburyport, Massachusetts event. The Dirty Dancer racing team would like to have a special thanks to Tom Anderson of Ontario Offshore Performance Specialists for all his dedication and effort in helping this team throughout the past 3 years. They also like to thank their other supporters such as South Shore Printers, the Signery, Farmer Automotive and Marine, Sutter South Bay Marina, and Steve's Custom Canvas for all their help. You're looking at A54 Dirty Dancer. Some of the other crew members of the Dirty Dancer racing team include Lynn Allen and Dee Goldstein. Some of the other competition in A class include Great Adventure, RC Marine, Fountain, and Crazy Rhythm. You're looking at A54 Dirty Dancer. Both driver and throttle man are doing a fine job. They're right on course. That 600 horsepower Chevy inboard sounds excellent, and Dirty Dancer has a good attitude. Both driver and throttle man looked real comfortable in their racing bolsters. Doing a fine job. A9 wide open is a 27-foot Cobra powered by one 650 horsepower Mercury engine and Mercruiser drive. Aboard wide open, driver Mike Scarpa from Jersey City, New Jersey. At the throttle is Mark Pica, also from Jersey City. Wide open placed third in Montauk earlier this year with an average speed of 66.78 miles per hour. A9 wide open. Some of the other competition that Wide Open is facing in A class includes Lap Dancer Jr., Wave Hippie, Texas Gold, Runaway. There's throttle man and driver of Wide Open, Mike Scarpa and Mark Pica. Seem to have things under control. A little bumpy there, but making pretty good headway. As we said earlier, that the water in the lake would be somewhat bumpier as we went along later on in the race, and that's exactly what's happened, but the boats do not seem to be that affected by it. Of course, once they get into the Presque Isle Bay, the water there is pretty flat, and they're making very good time in the bay. Throttle man Mark Pica using that throttle, doing a fine job. That 650 horsepower Mercury engine sounds excellent as Wide Open makes its way through the lake. By the way, this is a comeback here for this area. Lake Erie really hasn't had any kind of race, any powerboat racing going on here for almost 3 years. Last race here was in 1990. So the people here are pretty excited about this comeback of powerboat racing to the Lake Erie area. And of course, this is the first national race here on Lake Erie ever. So a lot of excitement here at the first annual Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run on Lake Erie, Pennsylvania. We'd like to wish the Wide Open racing team the very best of luck for the 1993 season. Runaway A1 is a 28-foot Magnum powered by two 350 horsepower Mercury engines and Mercruiser drives. The driver of Runaway is Frank Fazzulo of Fork River, New Jersey. Frank Fazzulo is also the new owner of Runaway. At the throttle, Chuck Burt from Brick, New Jersey, and navigating Steve Seisla from Manawaki, New Jersey. Runaway is A1 because it is the 1992 World Offshore Champion in A class. As we said, Runaway has a new owner, Frank Fazzulo from Fork River, New Jersey, and right now currently no sponsors for Runaway. So Frank Fazzulo and some of the other team members are looking for sponsors for Runaway. But they do have some team supporters, including the Bay Island Marina from Bricktown, New Jersey, and the Bayview Yacht Basin from Waretown, New Jersey. Both are managed by West Trek. You're looking at A1 Runaway. As we said, Frank Fazzulo is the new owner, and he is the driver of Runaway. Of course, we wish him the very best of luck with Runaway for the 1993 racing season. Runaway is a good boat, a fine boat, which has proven itself in the past. It's been racing for the last 3 years, and as we said, is the 1992 World Offshore Champion in A class. Some of the other competition that Runaway is facing in A class include Great Adventure, RC Marine, Fountain, Crazy Rhythm, Wide Open, Lap Dancer Jr., Wave Hippie, and Texas Gold. A1 Runaway. Gone Bananas F1. Gone Bananas is a 24-foot banana with one 300-horsepower Johnson outboard. Aboard Gone Bananas, driver John Flanagan from Glastonbury, Connecticut. At the throttle, Rich Fortunato from Colchester, Connecticut. Once again, Gone Bananas is in the factory class, which means that really any stock boat with a single engine, outboard or inboard, can qualify and can run in this race. And the great thing about it is, of course, that you can also use this boat for pleasure as well as racing in the Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge. A great idea. Some of the other titles for the Gone Bananas racing team include second place earlier this year at Montauk with an average speed of 60.37 miles per hour. In 1992, Gone Bananas was the 1992 World Champion in F class, also the North American Champion in F class, the Northeast High Points title in F class, the Northeast Regional Champion for F class as well. It also received the most checkered flags in 1992 and the most top 3 finishers for 1992. Sponsors include Fortunato Construction, Abacus Business Products, Atlantic Outboard, Vortex Artesian, Brushline Designs, and Micro Marine Services. You're looking at Gone Bananas F1 in the factory class. Gone Bananas is taking a little bit of a beating there from the bumpy waters in Lake Erie. Well, there's a big hit there on the outboard. Hopefully there wasn't any damage to it, but as you can see, the waters are getting pretty rough out there in Lake Erie. Gone Bananas, though, continues to make its way, finding a little bit rough. Well, more than a little bit, actually. Oh, there's a hard hit, and it looks like it's definitely damaged the engine's metal bracket, and it looks like that Gone Bananas is out of the race. The metal bracket has been damaged, and they're out of it. They're out of it. It looked like the bumpy waters just proved too much for Gone Bananas. There's Ocean Outboard, currently in second place in factory class, and it's stopping to see if it can lend a hand, see if anyone is hurt. But it looks like that the crew of Gone Bananas is waving Ocean Outboard, saying, "We're okay, we're fine. You guys get back in the race. We'll take care of it. We appreciate it, but get back in the race." And Ocean Outboard looks like it's circling somewhat, just double checking to see that everything's okay. Once again, it looks like that everyone is all right, no injuries involved, and the crew of Gone Bananas is basically thumbs up, saying, "Go ahead, Ocean Outboard. We're okay. Thank you for the help." Gone Bananas had been in first place in factory class until, of course, it had that problem. Now Ocean Outboard, as we look at Ocean Outboard, is now in first place in factory class, and of course that was nice of them, Ocean Outboard, to stop and see if they could help. Once again, there's Ocean Outboard F16. It's a 21-foot Challenger powered by one 260-horsepower Mercury outboard. Aboard Ocean Outboard, driver Tom Renk of Seaford, New York. At the throttle, Mike Gagliano, also of Seaford. Mike Gagliano would like to thank the whole crew over at Ocean Outboard for helping out with the boat. And Ocean Outboard is doing real fine this year. They took first place in Montauk with an average speed of 60.56. And also second place at Newburyport. And right now they're in first place, so we feel that probably they are in first place in factory class so far for this year as far as total points are concerned. You're looking at F16 Ocean Outboard, currently in first place in factory class. Mike Gagliano at the throttle doing a fine job, as is driver Tom Renk, both of Seaford, New York. The only other competition in F class for Ocean Outboard is Spoiled Banana. Gone Bananas, just a little earlier we just saw that they had that problem, that engine problem. And W&P Associates, well, they had to retire after the first lap. So right now it's between Ocean Outboard and Spoiled Banana in F class. Ocean Outboard currently #1 in F class in this 1993 Flag Ship International Offshore Challenge and Thunder Run. Best of luck to the Ocean Outboard racing team for the 1993 season. And there you see the bumpy waters doing a number on Ocean Outboard, but Ocean Outboard in control. Ocean Outboard, great attitude along these bumpy waters of Lake Erie. Ocean Outboard is right on course. This 21-foot Challenger has a great attitude. Mike at the throttle doing a fine job. This 2.4 Mercury outboard sounds excellent. Ocean Outboard currently in first place in F class. Spoiled Banana F57. There's Spoiled Banana. It's a 24-foot banana boat powered by one 300-horsepower Johnson outboard. There's the Spoiled Banana racing team. Rough waters there. Well, that's a hit. That's a pretty hard hit here that the engine just took, but apparently it's still okay. That 300 horsepower Johnson outboard which stood the jolt, and they're still in the race. Currently they are in second place in the F class. Earlier this year, Spoiled Banana came in first place at Newburyport and fifth place at Montauk, New York.